Hi, and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I am Phil Long, Precision Agronomy Advisor with Latham High-Tech Seeds. And this week, we're going to talk about 3 hot topics for the 2022 soybean crop. So, we're going to start right off with number 1. Last week, we talked about spraying. This week, we're going to continue that discussion a little bit. I've got some weeds in hand here, and we're going to talk a little bit about spraying potentially. Especially if you're on the extend side of things and you're maybe making that call to switch over to something like a PPO inhibitor or a group 14, or as I call them, the burners. That may be an option for you here if you've missed that window on extend. Remember, if you have extend flex, that you still have the option to spray Liberty, a great option there. Liberty and the PPOs are contact herbicides, so you got to remember coverage is important and spraying when the weeds are small. So I've got 2 good examples here. This water hemp, you can see pigweed's got purple on the underside of the leaf there, and this one is also a pigweed, water hemp plant. It's barely an inch tall. This one is about 3-4 inches tall. This is about as big as you want to see them for going after them with something like Liberty or any of the burner herbicides, something like a Flex Star or something, even Cobra if you want to really burn them. But any of these would be good options to go after if you're using the PPO. You want to make sure that those weeds are small. So that's the key. Once they get to this point, you're going to be really burning the beans, but don't lighten up too much. Those crop oils and so forth, those adjuvants that are going to kind of make it get into the weeds a little bit more, are also going to burn the soybeans, but you want to make sure you're taking care of those weeds. That's paramount above burning the soybeans a little bit. The soybeans will come back, they'll put on new growth, they'll come out of it even stronger and better than ever. So remember that when you're going into spray. If you've had to make a change, also remember the dates, early July, especially for things like Flex Star and stuff. You want to be stopping, you want to be done with it by then, because it's got a 10-month interval there, especially if we don't get a lot of rain before corn. So just remember to watch those, the staging and so forth on your herbicide labels. Number 2 that I wanted to talk about is soybean gall midge. That's important. It's going to become even more important if you don't have soybean gall midge. Don't tune this out. Soybean gall midge adults are now emerging in Iowa, Nebraska, and so forth, and on up into the South Dakota. So make sure you're paying attention to that. You're not going to see the adults. They're very small flies, very fragile. That's why we talked. They don't make it too far into the soybean field. You got to scout on the edges. That's where we're going to show up. If you've seen them before, they're going to continue to come from those edges, the grassy areas, the ditches, and so forth, or waterways. So be scouting on those now that we're at this point in the season. You can start scouting and watching for those. We typically see about 2 generations per year, and it's a pest that we're going to continue to learn more about and how we can continue to control that pest, but it's one that continues to move further and further if you watch that distribution map every year. So like I said, don't tune it out. It may be in a neighborhood near you sooner rather than later, unfortunately. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, I've got a soybean plant in my back pocket here, but I got soybeans all around me. I want to talk a little bit about growth and development, where we're at. It's a good reminder. So we're sitting here on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. So now at this point, the nights are going to start getting shorter, or excuse me, longer. The days are going to get shorter and the nights are going to get longer. The soybean plant is going to sense that in the next 2 weeks or so. It's going to start to make that transition. It realizes that. It knows that, okay, it's time to put on seed. It's time to finish out, start reproduction. So it's going to start doing all those processes. In the next 2 weeks or so, you're going to start to see flowers. And being indeterminate soybeans like we grow in Latham country, you're going to see flowers start really on the middle part of the stem typically, and they work their way up and down in the stem. That's why it's always tough in reproductive stages to stage them, because they continue to grow, they put on more nodes, more leaves, and then they also continue to flower. That's why soybeans are so adaptive and so able to work around, whether it's a low stand or something like that, or wider rows like we're looking at here in 30-inch rows. If you're in narrow rows, you're better off, at least in the 2022 season, getting planted late, because you're going to get canopy sooner. These 30-inch rows are going to struggle here in the next month to try and get canopied. We really want to see that. The soybeans, the key indicator for them, and I've talked about this for yield for many episodes, but that 95% light interception, they can sense that and figure when that row is closed. That's really when they do the best. They like to do that by the time they flower. Obviously, that's not going to happen this year, but the good thing is about soybeans, they have a lot of ways to make it up. They're going to continue to branch, continue to put on more nodes and more pods, but now that we've passed the summer solstice, they're going to begin that transition into reproduction and start focusing on setting seeds rather than necessarily growing. So some of their energy is going to be focused on that. So you got to remember when you're doing, whether it's spraying herbicides or doing different management techniques, this is an important time. But also on the stress side of things for soybeans, stress early season isn't quite as big a deal as stress later in the season. So remember that. That's when we like to see if we have issues with insects or diseases, making sure we're taking care of them around that R3 to R5 time period, when that later reproduction, when they're filling pods, setting seeds and so forth. But just remember that soybeans, they do have an amazing ability to adjust and adapt yield-wise and make up for it even later in the season. So with that, hopefully you're continuing to stay cool out there and continuing to manage your soybeans and get those weeds controlled this week. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-877-GO-LATHAM or visit us on our website at lathamseeds.com. As always, thanks for watching this week's Ask the Agronomist.